YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to my review for Kikai Sentai Zenkaiger episode 26. So this was Stacy's next return to attack the Rangers and mainly Zenkaiger to fight again. And it honestly was one of the better episodes in the whole series. I think it was Stacy's strongest overall showing since he debuted because, as I've mentioned and as I'm sure you've all noticed, every time he comes back he either is just at the grandma's house doing foreshadowing stuff or he gets his ass kicked. So this was like the first time since he showed up that it was significant, it was cool, and he actually had the upper hand. Because you remember that they were basically mending him and upgrading him after his last defeat. He wakes up after that in almost at the hospital, but at the Tojijento base, and then he runs into Zenkaiger and he shows that he's got new upgrades. He's got a shield that does not guard the realms of men, and this new little rocket shooter thing that reminded me, I mean, I've seen this type of thing before in lots of things, but it kind of reminds me of the little discrete Beskar rockets that the Mandalorian has, except they're not discreet at all. It's like, hey, what if these were lame looking? But he's like way more powerful. He defeats Zenkaiger really quickly, but then he's like, oh, this is a stupid villain thing in general, but it happens even more often with Toku villains where he's like, well, I could kill you right now, but this was just a test. It's like, no, end it now! Let's do the next Sentai! And then that leaves Zenkaiger to sort of ponder things because he's having dinner with the little Zenkaiger family and the grandma still doesn't know that Stacy and Satoshi are the same person, and also the same person as Ash, and he's kind of struggling with whether or not to tell her. He's thinking about it and talking to Juran about it. Kaiser shows up and he says, like, look, I know this is a tough decision, and you know that the grandma will be sad if she finds out that Stacy is a bad guy, but she'll also be sad if he done kills you. And just as they're talking about it, Stacy arrives at the very inconvenient location of the roof, and he's like, I'll use these gears, and Kaiser's like, what are those gears? I'm like, you can't see those from there. The whole scene reminded me of that scene in Shazam when the villain's talking from really far away and monologuing. I'm like, there's no way he can hear what he's saying up there with the wind and everything. But he summons a dark version of the mecha of ZenkaiOh, and it's like a black and purple repaint. I think they call it like Black ZenkaiOh or something like that. And it looks really cool. Probably my second favorite mecha formation after Zenkaijuo. I'm a sucker for like the black edition repaints of Megazords. They do like black and gold or black and silver, or in this case black and purple, and I think it looks really cool. But he summons that. Kaiser fights that during the episode, while Stacy fights the others on the ground, primarily Zenkaiger, and he uses a new summoning method to distract the other Rangers, and because he's amped up, he can now summon super forms. So he summons Super Gosei Red and Alberet Max to fight, and then Zenkaiger gets like an inspiration. He's like, remember my parents used to say dorky sayings? That's going to cause me to say dorky sayings. I'm going to channel my inner Gentaro. I don't care if you're a murderer that wants to murder me. I want to be your best friend. And that's basically how it goes. But then Stacy's getting the upper hand yet again, and he gets called away because earlier when he was back at the base, he became suspicious of the woman that the professor was using. And he, like, I don't know if he purposely freed her or it was an accident, but she got freed and she escaped. He realized who she was from looking at the archives earlier, but then when he's in the battle about to finish the Rangers off, one of the Tojijento shows up and says, like, the lady escaped, we have to go, the lady escaped. And Zenkaiser's like, what lady escaped? And he's like, your mom. I'm like, oh, you want to talk about mothers? Oh my god. The episode ends with, well, actually, it doesn't end quite there. Like, Zenkaiser's really confused and he wants to know where his mom is, but he goes to try to help Kaiser first in Zenkaijuo to defeat the mecha, and they don't even win that fight. But then after that, he's going throughout town, thinking that if his mom escaped, she would go either back to the restaurant or somewhere close by, but he can't find her yet. We don't know where she went. She just escaped through the portal. But based on the preview for next week, she escaped to one random world. But it was a really good episode. I mean, most notably, it was just nice to see Stacy actually get the upper hand. I talked about in previous videos how I really wish Stacy would have been more of a reoccurring threat for a while before they started it on the redemption stuff. Like, at this point, his redemption deal is pretty much already sealed in whatever form it takes. But I kind of wish that he had been a more consistent villain first, so it was nice to see him actually get consistent wins. The, like, negative version of the mecha was cool. You know, it's dumb fan service, but summoning the super forms was cool. It was some good character stuff for both Zenkaiger and Stacy. A surprisingly good, like, development for Zenkaiser's parents' story. Like, I knew that was going to come into play with the Stacy stuff, but I didn't expect one of them to escape, and it's going to lead into what looks like it's going to be a really fun episode next week where they're traveling to a bunch of different worlds, and based on the preview, it looks like it's a bunch of the worlds we've met before via the monsters, which is really cool. And it was just an all-around really solid episode that had good momentum into next week. Like, I like that unlike the last Stacy episode, it's not like, oh, this is a good episode, and then we're doing filler next week. Like, we're leading right into another episode, and I hope this continues into a nice little good mini arc. So yeah, I would give this episode a 4 out of 5. Very solid. If this is Stacy's last outing as a villain, at least he got some small victories. Although, admittedly, I'm slightly annoyed by of course he's not going to finish him off. But two things I hate about villains in general, but a lot of times in Toku, is when they say stuff like he said, where he's like, oh, this was just a test, or, oh, I like you. Like, no, you don't. He's your enemy. That's stupid logic. But anyway, what did you guys think of this episode? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for all my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.